was not family, so don't get carried away.
I was on my way to a luxury inn on a family vacation when I was left behind with my luggage deep in the mountains. My mother-in-law said this to me in the car with a smirk on her face, and my husband, whom I relied on, said laughing, "Walk to the inn." I had no choice but to start walking up the mountain road, and as I walked for a while, I passed by the scene of a rear-end collision. To my surprise, the car on one side was the car in which my husband and parents-in-law were driving.
"Oh, just in the right place. Help us,"
I said to my mother-in-law, who was screaming at me with a pale face. "Who are you?" "My name is Chloe. I am 37 years old and just got married last year. I am fluent in foreign languages and I am still working hard at the foreign-affiliated company I joined after graduating. In the midst of my busy work schedule, I used to go to a neighborhood bar to relax, and the owner of the bar was my husband, James. He asked me to go out with him, and I was so excited because I had always been a workaholic. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and he finally proposed to me. However, the condition of marriage that James proposed was that I would live with my in-laws at their home. I hesitated the idea of living with them, but I was 36 years old at the time. I was reluctant to move in with them because I was afraid that I might not be able to get married if I missed this opportunity. James's family consists of my 67-year-old father-in-law and 65-year-old mother-in-law. These two were actually quite old foxes. The first day after James and I joined the family and moved in, my mother-in-law smiled at me.
"Now that you're here is my daughter-in-law, Chloe is going to do all the housework from now on, right?"
I was surprised and told her that I was busy working for a foreign company and that it would be difficult for me to do all the housework. But my parents-in-law instantly turned grumpy. My father-in-law told me with a bitter look on his face,
"Then quit the job. It's your duty as a daughter-in-law to take care of the house."
I looked at James as if asking for help, and he turned away from me.
Dad and Mom are right. I didn't like you pretending to be a career woman.
It was as if James had changed from the single James who had understood my work. I couldn't believe it, but the three of them were pressing me to quit my job. I loved my job and the career I had built. I couldn't think of quitting my job, so I resisted.
"If you insist so much, you can keep your job, but you must do your housework perfectly, and you must put all of your income into the house."
"What? Oh, no. If you don't like it, quit your job immediately." Both my father-in-law and James nodded in agreement to my mother-in-law's words. I ended up taking their terms and continuing to work. However, it is extremely difficult to perfectly do housework for 4 people while working outside the home. Moreover, my parents-in-law did not do any housework at all and began to treat me like a servant. One day, my mother-in-law ordered me to buy an assortment of expensive pastries.
"I need to bring something for my friend. Chloe, please buy them for me today."
I did as I was told, and she took it without thanking me and turned to leave. Mother-in-law paid for it.
"What is it? Are you trying to take money from your family?"
"But it's expensive."
"Oh no, no, no. You're so greedy. People like you are called miser."
My mother-in-law spat at me and went to her room. Ever since I started bringing in my salary, my mother-in-law has clearly become more lavish with her money, spending it foolishly. However, I could not blame her for that, as I was in a weak position. It is not only my mother-in-law who is a nuisance. My father-in-law, who calls himself a gourmet, often criticized my cooking. One day, after I had prepared a Japanese-style menu with grilled fish as the main dish and put it on the table.
What? Grilled fish? What is this? I want meat.
My father-in-law looked around the table with a frown. I made this for your health, I replied. But that seemed to upset my father-in-law.
Don't treat me like I'm old. You can't even cook properly, even though you're my daughter-in-law. Hurry up and cook again.
I wanted to say something back, but I had to go shopping and start cooking all over again. I had to do all the housework while working to accommodate the selfishness of my father-in-law and mother-in-law. After months of living like this, my stress level had reached its limit. I lost 8 kilograms in the first 6 months of living with them. So I decided to appeal to James. I told him about my parents-in-law's unreasonable treatment of me and asked for his help. James, I tried to do my best for you at first, but my father-in-law and mother-in-law are so terrible to me. I don't know if I can stand it from now on. Then, James raised his eyebrows in a troublesome manner and said,
You're my wife who came to this house, aren't you? It's only natural for you to listen to my dad and mom.
What? You could help me a little. Maybe you could do some of the housework with me.
Don't make me repeat it. Housework is a daughter-in-law's job. I'm working for your selfishness, so you should do it perfectly.
That's too much. James was irritated by my dissatisfied face and took something out of his bag. It was a signed and sealed divorce decree.
If you complain again, I divorce you. It would be a shame for an old woman like you to be divorced, and you won't be able to remarry.
James said this threateningly and left for work with a satisfied look on his face. I could only stare at the divorce papers in amazement. One day about 2 weeks later, while I was cleaning the living room, my mother-in-law called my father-in-law and husband over to the dining room table.
Let's make plans for our annual family trip.
Whoa, that sounds great. Where do you want to go this year?
I recently won the lottery for $3,000. Let's go splurge this year.
As I listened, I thought to myself, if they have that kind of money, they should pay back the money I have paid for them. But I kept my mouth shut. I don't even know if I am a member of the trip in the first place. As I was silently cleaning up beside my parents-in-law and James, who were happily looking at a travel brochure, my mother-in-law spoke to me in a coaxing voice.
Chloe, you too, pack your bags so that you don't forget anything.
Eh? Can I go too?
Of course, it's a family trip. Don't worry about the money.
I was elated with joy. More than the fact that I could go on the trip, I was more happy that I was properly recognized as a family. Then came the day of the trip. The destination was a luxury inn in a neighboring state. James was to drive our car, and I got into the passenger seat. My parents-in-law were smiling in the back seat. 2 hours after our departure, our car was driving on an unpopular mountain road. James told us that this road was a shorter route. We found a small store at the end of the winding mountain road.
I'm thirsty. Chloe, can you get me something?
I agreed and got out of the car alone, but when I got closer and looked closely, the store was already abandoned. I was about to get back into the car when I heard the sound of an engine. To my surprise, the car was about to leave. What are you doing? The car started to move slowly. I pulled the passenger door, but it was locked from the inside. Then the window on my side was opened and the face of my grinning mother-in-law appeared.
My daughter-in-law isn't family, so I won't take you in the family car on family trip. Don't get too carried away.
Behind my mother-in-law's back, my father-in-law looked as if he couldn't contain his laughter. As I stood there, James looked into my face and chuckled.
You should reflect a little on your daily attitude. At best, you should walk to the inn.
Then the car revved its engine and drove away without me. They had intended to leave me deep in the mountains like this from the beginning. That's too much. Even though I was furious, I had to get out of the mountains before dark. I took out my cell phone, but to my surprise, there was no signal. I had no choice but to walk along the road for now. I had enjoyed running before I got married, so walking itself was not a problem for me. After about 40 minutes of walking, suddenly I came upon the scene of a traffic accident. It seemed that a car coming from behind had crashed into an expensive-looking black car. Moreover, the car that hit the car was my family's car in which I had been riding until a moment ago. Two strong men like SP were getting out of the luxury car, and they were yelling at the car with the three of us in it. As I was watching them, a voice came from the half-open back seat window of the car.
Ah, Chloe?
They seemed to be in good health. My mother-in-law called out to me with an impatient look on her face, causing all the strong men to look back at me at once.
Please help me.
Then I said to them, "What? Who are you?" I glanced at my mother-in-law, who was stunned, and passed the accident scene with no expression on my face. The strong men started yelling again at my parents-in-law and my husband. In between them, my husband said, "Chloe, wait for me." I think I heard him yell, or maybe I didn't. I felt my mouth relax and walked away. After a while, the signal was restored, and I received a phone call from my impatient husband.
Hey, why did you ignore me earlier? Those men are foreigners, and they're speaking so much unknown language that I can't understand what they're saying.
What? So what?
You should come back and do something about it. Foreign languages are the only thing you've got going for you.
I no longer cared about anything else, hung up the phone and blocked the call. Later, I managed to arrive at our destination, an inn. After confirming that the accommodation fee was paid by my mother-in-law's credit card, I checked in alone. The inn was a wonderful place to stay. My mother-in-law was just as happy as she had been, and the inn offered us a wonderful hospitality. The open-air bath in the large bathroom had the best quality of spring water, and it instantly soothed my tired body after a long day of walking. The food was sumptuous full-course cuisine. I was served local beef, crab, and even food for the three of them who could not come here. I also ordered a bottle of expensive wine and drank it alone. Feeling completely refreshed, I enjoyed more in the indoor bath attached to the room, and slept soundly on a bed of the spacious room. That day I relaxed and slept soundly for the first time in my married life. The next morning, after taking a morning bath, I checked out of the inn fully refreshed. I then took a bus from the inn to the station nearest my home and headed directly to a certain place. When I returned home, my parents-in-law and James were already there. "You're home at last, aren't you? Come here."
We're injured. We had an accident to deal with. And we're finally home now.
Each of the three men has gauze on their faces and arms. It looks like just a scratch, but they are in a great deal of pain.
What in the world were you doing leaving us alone to get help?
My mother-in-law pressed me, to which I replied curtly, "What do you mean? I was enjoying a luxurious inn." The three of them looked stunned for a moment, but then immediately became enraged.
Leaving family member in an accident is the act of rascal.
Because my mother-in-law told you that a daughter-in-law is not family, right?
You're holding onto that kind of thing in your heart. That's a figure of speech.
What? We're not family anymore.
What?
I have filed the divorce papers, so we are strangers now. Yes, I had kept the divorce papers that James had confronted me with before and had gone to the municipal office to file them as soon as I returned home from the inn. When the three of them heard this, they panicked and cursed me again verbally, but I kept a cool face. At first James said, "What are you thinking? You're not worthy of being my wife." But when I didn't budge, he began to cry, and he hung on to me.
I'm sorry for everything I've done. Chloe, please don't give me a divorce.
Even if you feel sorry, I already filed for divorce.
Actually, the person with whom I had the accident was a rich foreigner. It was a very expensive car. He's claiming a substantial amount of money for the damages. Please help me.
Well, even if you say that, I'm already a stranger. You'll have to settle the rest with your family. I briskly cut James off and headed for the front door with the luggage I had packed in one hand. The three of them followed me, looking cringing. I finally turned around at the front door. "Oh, by the way." Then James says, "You reconsidered." James's eyes light up.
I know, there is no way you would abandon your family in this condition.
My mother-in-law also said that, somehow with great enthusiasm. I regained my breath, smiled, and said, "I just want to say one last thing. The inn was great. Thank you for treating me." I heard a shout from behind me, but I left without looking back. After that, the three of them seemed to have recovered from their injuries. It seems that their injuries were not serious to begin with. I learned later that James had been stingy with his money and had not purchased any car insurance. His own car was scrapped, and the foreign celebrity with whom he had the accident charged him an eye-popping amount. To begin with, James's income alone is not enough to support that family. My salary covered a considerable amount of their living expenses, so I knew they would be destitute if I left. They finally sold the house to pay the bills, but that wasn't enough and they seemed to have borrowed money. Now the three of them are living in a small shabby apartment and working to pay off their debts. James has taken some day jobs and his parents-in-law are also going to work. I have no sympathy for them whatsoever when I hear this. I, on the other hand, am living a comfortable life on my own. Now that I have some money to spare, I am planning to stay at that luxury inn that I have grown so fond of again soon.